I'm 75 years old, and I'm sitting in a house that looks exactly like the one I worked my whole life to earn. It's quiet now. Too quiet. And there's a strange feeling that comes with that kind of quiet. The kind that settles in your chest when you realize the noise you were chasing all those years was never meant to fill you. People used to tell me I had it all figured out. They still do sometimes. They look at the photos on the wall, the certificates in frames, the stories they've heard secondhand. They say my life looks solid, respectable, successful. I nod because it's easier than correcting them, and maybe because part of me wants to believe it too. But the truth is, I built a life others admired, and I never really lived in it. At this age, time feels different. It doesn't stretch out in front of you anymore. It gathers behind you. It presses on your back when you stand up, reminds you of itself when your knees ache or when you forget a name you once knew well. I don't tell this story to be admired or understood. I'm telling it because I don't have much time left not to. When I was younger, in my 20s and 30s, I wasn't trying to escape life. I was trying to do it right. That mattered to me. I grew up watching my parents scrape by, always worried, always tired. I promised myself I wouldn't live that way. I wanted stability. I wanted to be dependable. I wanted to be someone people could count on. So when opportunities came, I took them. When responsibility knocked, I answered. I didn't see it as sacrifice. I saw it as adulthood. I got a steady job, then a better one. Longer hours, more expectations, a title people recognized. I learned how to be efficient, how to keep my feelings out of the way, how to show up on time and stay late without complaint. People noticed that. Promotions followed. Compliments followed. I told myself I was doing what needed to be done. I married young. We talked about the future, the way people do when they believe it will unfold slowly, generously. We said things like one day and eventually, without realizing how quickly those words expire. I loved my spouse, I think, or maybe I loved the idea of building something solid together. It's hard to separate those two, looking back. We had children. I remember holding them when they were small, how light they felt, how easily they slept against my chest. I remember promising myself I'd be present. I meant it when I said it. I just didn't know how quietly presence can slip away. Most days, I left early. I came home tired, not angry, not cruel, just tired. I'd sit at the table while dinner cooled, nodding along to stories I didn't fully hear. I told myself I'd make it up on the weekend. I told myself this was temporary. There was always something that needed doing, a project that couldn't wait, a deadline that mattered, a chance that might not come again. Saying no felt irresponsible. Saying yes felt like progress. Years went by that way, not dramatic years, ordinary ones. School plays I arrived late to, birthdays where I brought a gift instead of my attention, conversations that started with, "We need to talk," and ended with, "Not tonight." I didn't feel like I was missing my life. I felt like I was building it. People praised me for my discipline, for my dedication. They said my family was lucky. They said I was setting a good example. I let those words carry me forward when my own doubts surfaced. Praise can be a powerful thing. It quiets questions before they finish forming. The cost didn't arrive all at once. It came in small withdrawals I barely noticed. A spouse who stopped waiting up. Children who learned not to interrupt, friends who stopped calling because I always seemed busy. None of it felt like loss at the time. It felt like efficiency. There were moments, though. I see them now. Times when I hesitated at the office door, wondering if I should leave early. Times when I caught a glimpse of myself in a mirror and didn't recognize the look on my face. Times when the house felt unfamiliar even while I lived in it. I remember one evening in particular. I came home later than usual. The lights were off. There was a note on the counter saying dinner was in the fridge. No anger in the handwriting, just information. I stood there longer than I needed to, holding that piece of paper. I told myself not to be dramatic. I told myself tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow usually wasn't. As the years passed, my children grew more independent. They didn't need me in the same way. I told myself that was success, that I had done my job. I didn't notice how little they told me about their inner lives. I didn't realize how much of myself I had kept locked away from them. My marriage became polite, functional. We talked about schedules and repairs and obligations. We stopped talking about fears, about disappointments, about who we were becoming. I assumed that was normal. I assumed everyone's life flattened out like that. Work, on the other hand, kept asking more of me, and I kept giving it. There was always another rung on the ladder, another reason to stay late, another moment where being needed felt like being valued. Then came the turning point. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no collapse, just a quiet, irreversible shift. My spouse got sick, not suddenly, but enough to rearrange everything. Doctor visits replaced dinners out, medications lined the counter. I found myself sitting in waiting rooms with time I didn't know how to use. For the first time in decades, work wasn't the center of the day. I thought I'd step into that space easily. I didn't. I realized how little practice I had being present without a task, how awkward silence felt, how unfamiliar real conversation had become. We talked more then, or tried to. There were things we danced around, old hurts that felt too heavy to lift, regrets that didn't have a solution anymore. I wanted to say I was sorry for the years I wasn't there. I didn't know how to say it without making it about me. They passed away not long after. I was holding their hand. The room was calm, too calm. And in that stillness, something settled in me that hasn't left since. There are apologies you can make, and then there are apologies that arrive after it's too late to be heard. After the funeral, people came. They spoke kindly. They told me I'd been strong, that I'd done right by my family. I thanked them. I believed them a little. I needed to. Then the house emptied out. The cards stopped coming. The routine dissolved, and I was left with time. More time than I'd had in decades. It felt like a gift and a punishment at the same time. I retired not long after. The office threw a party. There was cake, speeches, a plaque with my name on it. People said I'd be missed. I smiled for the photos. I took the plaque home and set it on a shelf. No one asked what I planned to do next. That's when it became clear. The life I had built functioned beautifully without me. The systems ran. The roles filled themselves, and the relationships I thought I'd invested in were thinner than I'd believed. My children called, but not often. They had their own lives. I didn't blame them. I just noticed how little space I occupied in them. Friends drifted away. We had shared contexts, not shared selves. Once the context disappeared, so did the connection. I spent long afternoons walking through rooms that felt staged, like a house prepared for someone else's comfort. I realized I had chosen safety over aliveness, approval over intimacy. I had done everything right and somehow missed the center of it. There are things that can't be fixed. You can't go back and sit on the floor with your kids when they're small. You can't reopen conversations that ended years ago. You can't ask someone what they needed from you when they're no longer here to answer. I used to think regret came from mistakes, from bad decisions, from recklessness. Now I know it often comes from delay, from assuming there will be time later to feel, to speak, to show up fully. If you're listening to this, I don't know where you are in your life. I don't know what pressures you're carrying or what responsibilities feel non-negotiable. I only know what it's like to wake up one day and realize the scaffolding you built your life on has become the walls that keep you out of it. I'm not telling you to abandon your duties. I'm not telling you to make dramatic changes. I'm telling you that attention is not something you can save for later. Neither is closeness. Neither is truth. The moments that mattered most to me were never the ones I prepared for. They were the ones I postponed. Now my days are slower. I make my own meals. I sit by the window in the morning and watch the light change. Sometimes I hear laughter outside and feel a mix of warmth and distance. I think about the person I might have been if I'd been braver in quieter ways. I don't hate my life. That's important to say. There is gratitude here. There is pride, too. But there is also a deep, steady sorrow for the parts of myself I never invited in. I don't have many years left. I can feel that. I'm learning how to live in the time that remains, imperfectly, honestly. I talk more now. I listen better. I sit with discomfort instead of outrunning it. It doesn't undo the past, but it makes the present feel real. If this meant something to you, if it stirred something you've been putting off, I hope you pay attention to that feeling. Not urgently, just honestly. I'm 75, and I finally understand that a life can look full from the outside and still feel untouched from within. I wish I had known that sooner. But this is when I know it. And this is when I'm saying it.